G'day there guys, it's your main man Markee, back at it again with another episode of r/EntitledParents. Now if you love today's video, I want you to sit back, relax, chuck a prawn on the barbie, and enjoy the content. Posted by user Blue Light Bookworm, titled, Entitled Mother Doesn't Like Where I Parked My Ambulance Whilst We Were Saving a Life, so crashed her own car. Hello. I thought I would tell another tale from the weird and wonderful world of a UK ambulance service. Sorry guys, this is a long one. I work for an emergency ambulance service and have done for many years. This happened about 4 years ago. My crewmate and I were sent to call down to our local computer/sat-nav at about 2 PM, one very warm and sunny shift. We were given just an address at first, and that it was the highest category of calls, which means we had 8 minutes to get there, but no details on what the call was. This isn't unusual. They get an address first to save precious seconds sending us, then downgrade the job to a lower category, if needs be, once the details have come through. I'm driving whilst one of my favourite crewmates was in the passenger seat, so on go the blue lights and sirens to get through the building traffic. Then, our dispatcher calls us up on the radio. Female mid-50s, CPR in progress. Well, damn. We race like hell to get to this poor lady. Every minute counts when doing CPR. The longer it goes on, the more risk of brain damage and less likelihood of getting the patient back. Luckily, we weren't far off and got there very quickly. The lady lived in a very nice house on a well-off street. It was a typical crescent street, half moon-shaped with both ends of the road connecting to the main road. There was a long line of cars parked on one side of the street, meaning that there was only enough room for one car to pass at a time. Thankfully, there was no one driving the other way, and I was able to drive to the lady's house without encountering anyone coming the other way. Score, there was a rapid response car already on the scene. That means we had another set of hands to help, and they will have already taken all the equipment into the house, so we didn't have to. Because of all the parked cars, I was unable to pull the big box van in to allow other drivers to pass, so I just blocked the road. Blue lights were still going, but the sirens had been turned off. No use deafening ourselves whilst we work. We rush into the house and find our lady laid on the floor of her entrance hall, with my manager making sure that her airways was clear whilst the poor lady's daughter was continuing doing CPR. I quickly swap with the daughter and continue doing chest compressions, whilst the other two went about doing all the other little things that need doing at this time. I will spare you all the medical details, but I will say that during chest compressions, a heart is not working and is stopped, and we attempt to restart it, whilst also pumping the blood around the body and to the brain enough that the patient doesn't get brain damage. Unfortunately, CPR has a very low success rate, as other medical conditions usually cause issues as well. That day, however, everything was in our favour, and we got a heart rhythm back. This is not the movies. She didn't suddenly wake up, sit up, thank us, and go on her way. We had sorted the immediate problem, but not what caused the heart to stop. You need some very specialist doctors for that. It was at this point we all heard someone beeping like crazy on their car horn, but we were all busy and ignored the noise. As we had gotten a rhythm, it was now a race to get the lady into the hospital to the doctors before it was lost again. I raced back out to the ambulance to find some Karen in a car in front of my ambulance, just sat there beeping her horn angrily. As soon as she saw me, she opened her window to shout at me, "You need to move that ambulance. I need to pick up my kids from school. Don't you know how to park? You can't just block the road." "Ma'am, this is a medical emergency. I will not move, and I am within my rights to park where I am. But I need to pick my kids up, you fudging expletive, so move." I would like to again point out that this was not a dead-end street. She could have easily reversed or turned around in someone else's drive and gone out the other side, but no, she decided to sit and shout at an ambulance instead. I ignore her, open the back of the ambulance and get the stretcher out, and to the house, all the while Karen is shouting and swearing at me. Karen, I deal with drunks and druggies at the weekend. You haven't even managed 1/3 of the bad language I get from them. I'm not moving for you. My manager had heard the shouting, but was busy, so didn't do much more than look up at me. I'm not showing signs of worry, so he just shrugs it off. He has been working with me for long enough to know I can handle most things. We quickly lift our patient onto the stretcher just outside her house, but the movement means that her already weak heart stops again. Dang. We start chest compressions again, and as we do so, we hear an almighty bang and the sound of metal scraping on stone. What has Karen done? As I'm stood nearest the road in the front garden, I am the only one who can now see what's happened. I don't know how many people know this, but outside some British homes between the pavement and the road, there is sometimes a patch of grass called a verge. Most people don't want strangers parking their cars on this verge and tearing it up, so go to all sorts of lengths to stop people from driving on it. Around here, it is quite common to have large bits of concrete around the size and shape of half a yoga ball placed on the edges of the verge and painted white so that they are clearly visible. Can you see where this is going? Yep. Instead of doing the sane, sensible thing of turning around or reversing, our dumb Karen has attempted to go around the ambulance by driving onto the grass verge at full speed, hitting one of these yoga balls, and actually going up onto it, beaching her car on the concrete. I could see her sat in the driver's seat, shouting and hitting her steering wheel. My manager doesn't even look up from the patient he is working on and says, "What's going on?" "Oh, nothing, boss. Just some karma at work." I take over the chest compressions as we quickly roll the stretcher to the ambulance. I see the moment Karen sees us. She was red-faced until she turned her head towards us to see 3 ambulance workers doing CPR on Our Lady. I have never seen someone go so white so quickly. She shrinks down into her chair and tries to disappear as I just smirk at her. At this point, both my crewmate and manager have seen the beached car. To be fair, it was hard to miss. And I heard a quiet, "What the hell?" from my manager. We loaded the patient up, and just before we set off, we got a pulse again. Yay! A very quick run to the hospital, and some excellent work by the doctors, meant that Our Lady was awarded a brilliant prognosis, and was able to leave the hospital not long after. Sorry, can't remember how long she was in for. Dunno what happened to Karen, maybe she's still there, stuck for all eternity. Posted by user Keith the Ghost, titled, "Entitled Aunt Thinks She Gets My Child?" So this happened when I was a teenager, but I still think about it, and when I found this subreddit, I just had to post it. So when I was 17, I got pregnant, and the father didn't want anything to do with it, which was fine, as we weren't even dating. I intended on putting the baby up for adoption because I wasn't ready for a child, and I'm sure there is lovely people out there that could love and care and provide for my baby. However, my aunt, who already had 6 children, 5 boys and 1 girl for some crazy reason, automatically believed the child would be hers once I gave birth. She was also a terrible mother, so there's no way my child was going to her. I asked my parents if they'd told her this or anything, and they had no idea. All they had told her is that I was pregnant and was going to give the baby up. I found all this out when I went to hers for my cousin's birthday. She made a comment about how she was going to have to make some room for the baby, and I asked, "Wait, wow, are you pregnant again?" She laughed, and then told me, "No, when you give your baby, silly." At this point, I literally thought she had lost her marbles. I told her, no, I was giving my baby up for adoption. She just laughed once again and said, "Sure, that's what I'm saying now." I continued to clearly tell her, "No, you are not having my child. Like, this isn't some kind of, 'Can I borrow your Barbie doll?' This is literally a human." She just continued telling me I'll change my mind once I meet my baby. I gave up in the end because she would not accept the fact I wouldn't give her my baby. When I went into labor, my mum told my grandpa, who told my aunts, and she turned up at the hospital waiting for me to give her my baby. I was ticked and told her to leave. She finally left, and it was the weirdest experience of my life. I'm close to my cousins, and so I have seen her since, but I haven't really properly spoken to her since. My baby girl was stillborn, and it was devastating, and I know my entitled aunt made some comments to my parents behind my back, but to this day I refuse to find out what she said. Posted by user Redline Bidoff, titled, "Your dog is dying, give me it." Backstory. About 2 months ago, my family got a black Labradoodle puppy. She is now 19 weeks old. She was born on Valentine's Day, actually, and doing very well. This happened while I was taking her out on a walk through some local fields. The cast are me, I'll let you decide who that is, entitled mother, the kid who looked around 10ish, shopkeeper, owned a cafe at the top of the hill. So, I'd taken our dog out on a walk in some fields near our house, and there's a path that leads up to a cafe that overlooks the hills nearby. My dog was drinking from a water bowl outside, and I was sitting on a bench browsing on my phone. Enter entitled mother, stage left. Entitled mother and Kay climbed over some steps and came towards the cafe. Now, I need to point out that my puppy is very overly friendly and thinks everyone we meet is a member of the family, and she loves to run up to people we meet to get strokes. I felt her pulling on the lead, so I got up and let her walk over to say hello. Kay's like, "Aw, he's so cute, can I stroke it?" She's a girl, and yeah, she loves meeting new people. Entitled mother had been looking at the dog with caution, which I didn't think much of, as obviously some people are scared of dogs. My puppy didn't seem to be bothering her much anyway. She says, "Are you sure it's safe to be walking her in this weather? It's been the hottest it's been all year in the UK this week." Yeah, she's fine with warm weather, she loves it. But what if she gets heat stroke or gets ill? I don't think you should be walking her in this weather. As I said, she's fine walking in this weather because her coat is designed to keep her cool. Labradoodles can have either normal or double-coated fur. She is double-coated. No, she's not. We have a dog at home and you should never take them out while it's this hot without shaving their coat. But Mum, we don't even have a— Shut up, kid. Kay just shrugged it off and went back to playing with my dog. Look how much she's panting. She's not well. Give me the dog now. She put her hands out so I could give her the lead. What the hell? No. As I've already said, the coat is designed like this so she doesn't overheat. You can't have her. Bullcrap. Entitled mother then tried grabbing the lead out of my hand. This was made even more hilarious by the fact that Kay and my puppy were pretty much oblivious to this all and were still playing. It was at this point that S came out as he'd heard the commotion and says, "What's going on here? Thank God. This boy stole our dog and is trying to kill it." That's not true. I was letting her drink and this lady is trying to take her away because she says I'm going to give her heat stroke. It's very important to mention that we go on this route regularly and we've talked to S a lot before. He looked at my dog and realized it was me. "Oh, hey OP. Miss, I know this boy, and if you don't leave him and his dog alone, I will be calling the police. But no buts. Now go." Entitled mother realized she'd been defeated and pulled on her son's arm to go. As they walked off, her son looked back at me, pointed at his mum and did the crazy hand movement with his hands. TLDR, woman who doesn't own a dog herself thinks she knows better than the owner, tries to steal a dog because it's apparently dying, and gets instant karma when she messes with the shopkeeper. Posted by user The Squishy Stapler, titled, "A Brief Encounter with a Karen at the IKEA Restaurant." So today, my husband took me shopping at IKEA for some random items we needed, but were unable to get due to previous public gatherings restrictions. We decided to make a day out of it and grab lunch at the IKEA restaurant while we were at it. Now, for clarification, due to COVID-19, there's certain rules and procedures to be followed at IKEA, meaning that now you stand in queue, first to get your table number, then move forward to order and go take your designated seat, and one of the server wheels your food to you. All fine and dandy. We stand in line to get our table number, though the queue is kind of long and we're considering scrapping the idea and just go eat somewhere else. Right next to the window is a giant menu with items offered in the IKEA restaurant, the usual meatballs, salmon, salads, and the like. In front of us stands a Karen, with a kid in a stroller which looked to be around 4 years old. Karen stares at the menu and looks over at the restaurant employee, handing out table numbers, and says, "Do you have any chimkin nuggets?" Silence. The employee is staring at her. We're staring at her. God and evolution are arguing in the background about whose fault this brain fart is, given that they are usually not served here at all, and the giant picture menu is quite clear on that subject. Not to mention that McNuggets are a kind of a different restaurant chain's gig. No, we don't. I'm sorry. You don't? What kind of a kid-unfriendly restaurant is this? My child doesn't want to eat anything on your menu. Well, I'm sorry, madam. The menu you see to your left is all that is offered. Karen huffs, grabs the table number, and moves forward. The employee glances over at us, gives us a table number, and goes, "Oh, pardon me. Madam is pregnant. You don't wait. Please just step here to the side and follow my colleague. He'll take you to the register so you can order." Karen's head whips around so fast, I thought it might fall off. Her face is a picture of shock at unjust treatment. She glares at my 8-month pregnant belly, then at the employee and screeches, "I have a child as well." The employee, now with another one on tow, stares at her blankly and goes, "Yes, but madam here is pregnant." I can sense him struggling not to say, "Well, you pushed yours out a while ago, didn't you?" As we leave with the other server, I can still hear her in the background, arguing that she has a child and should be given the same treatment as a pregnant woman, while the IKEA employee is still patiently trying to explain to her that it's company policy that disabled people and pregnant women have the right to cut queue, and unless she or her son is disabled or she herself is pregnant, she can't cut in. 20 minutes later, we're done with our food and we stand up to leave. I spot Karen still in queue, third in line from the register, glaring at us. I resist the urge to wave and just pat my belly happily, then waddle away with my husband. I have no doubts that IKEA is getting a bad review on Yelp or something, due to not serving McNuggets and not letting her entitled self cut in line, even though she played the child card fairly early on. Posted by user Allied Funk, titled, "Entitled Mother Tries to Make My Friend and I Leave the Seats That We Paid For." This took place in a mall movie theater a few years back. Here's the cast. There's me, the teenage wheelchair user, AR is my friend, also a teenage wheelchair user, and U is my friend's nurse, and EM is the entitled mother. AR and myself went to a movie, and we bought tickets for 2 wheelchair seats, the only 2 wheelchair seats that didn't have a regular seat between them. The movie trailers had just started when entitled mother stood in front of us and demanded that we move to another seat so she could park her stroller. We refused, but she kept getting louder. She said that her seat was right behind us and she wanted to keep an eye on the stroller. The theater wasn't full, so I suggested that she move further down where there were open wheelchair spots. This really set her off. She told me that it's rude for a child to talk back to an adult. I told her I was 17, but she didn't believe me. She started yelling at us, going on about how kids like us already get whatever we want out of pity, how we don't know what it's like to spend all day walking around the mall with a little kid, the movie was PG-13 by the way, and how we shouldn't even be out by ourselves anyway. At this point, NU came over and told entitled mother to stop harassing us. NU also pointed out that those spaces were reserved for wheelchairs, not strollers. This sent entitled mother on another tangent, full of racial slurs and mocking NU for working for 2 white brats. NU is a black woman. NU calmly left the theater, and entitled mother kept yelling at us. At one point, entitled mother tried to physically move AR's manual wheelchair. The only reason AR didn't completely flip over is because a man a few rows back saw what was happening and grabbed the back of AR's chair as she was falling forward. NU came back in with the manager of the theater and a security guard who had a brief confrontation with entitled mother before removing her from the theater. The manager ended up giving the 2 of us each a free popcorn and drink as an apology. All that for a movie my dad had already spoiled for me. Oh, that sucks. Posted by user ArcKnight40, titled, "My entitled mum thinks she can tell my sister what to do with her body." Hey guys, I've heard a lot of you want to read more about me protecting my sister's rights from our mother, so here we are. First, you may want a bit of context, but you can skip it if you want. My homophobic, racist, and addicted to alcohol and cigarettes mum used to physically and verbally/emotionally abuse me as a child. But since I'm an adult now, she can't get to me as much as she used to. But she continues to verbally and emotionally hurt my little sister. Her actions toward her family caused my father to divorce her and leave the house. Apparently, my mum mistreated my dad the same way she did and still does to us. I recently started a rebellion against her. I aim to protect my sisters and I rights and freedom as human beings. It happened an hour ago. Before we get started, meet the cast. Me looks like it's me. IB is insensitive Bertha. I have to call my mum. DS equals desperate sister. DS and I were sitting on the couch, minding our own business and having a conversation about the new haircut DS wants to have. Her new haircut is an important part of her gender identity because she wants to come out of the closet as gender non-conforming, the same way I did. I don't use they, them pronouns for DS because she told me she doesn't want to change her pronouns for now. As the conversation goes by, DS shows me a picture of the haircut she wants. I tell her it will undoubtedly look amazing on her because it really will. This is where IB chooses to interact with us. What do you mean getting a haircut? Mum, DS already talked to you about getting a new haircut. Why do you seem so surprised to hear about it? DS says, look what I want to get next August. And she shows her the picture excitedly, a proud smile on her face. IB's face becomes suddenly red and a look of disgust and anger appears in her eyes. Oh no, not that. Absolutely not. You won't be getting that. You should have a longer haircut, but not that. It's too short, look at that. I don't want that for you. DS's smile vanishes. Now she looks sad. So sad. God, I just couldn't stand it. Then she turned to me with that same face. Her deep blue eyes screamed, help me, she's yelling at me now, and I don't know what I did wrong today. I saw myself in her eyes. I was in the same position as her. When I was a minor, IB thought I was her property. I couldn't have an opinion, I couldn't be who I wanted to be because IB thought she owned my body. I remember how depressed I was, how desperate I was in the closet. I had nobody to turn to, but DS does, because DS has me now. A bucket of rage and injustice fell on me like it weighted the world. I forced the bucket into me to stay in me. I kept calm and I reacted. I'm going to use the power I have as an adult to counter IB's own abuse of power. I say, hey, why are you judging a person's choice of haircuts? It's not like it'll be your hair that's going to get chopped, you know. IB is already fuming. She hates it when someone disagrees with her. Well, DS is a minor, and I said she can't have that haircut because it's too short for her. It's not actually her real excuse. She just doesn't want to have another child that doesn't conform to the gender IB chose for DS. LGBTQ phobic, you know? I tell her, I am an adult too, and I say that it's not right to choose what DS has to do with her hair instead of herself. It's her body, not yours. I'm still the adult, and I do what I want for my daughter. The conversation isn't really a conversation at that point. IB is screaming while I'm talking. DS is watching, incredulous. I still can see the look of hurt from the last time she looked at me, but I can tell she wants to try to stand up for herself. I decided to include her in. And you think it's right? If I take your words, I can do what I want to my daughter. Does that mean you'll take advantage of her if you want to? And I'm going to stop you before you respond because I know your answer already. It's no. So, do you think it's okay to treat DS more like an object you own than an actual teenager, your child? IB tries to speak yell, but I can't afford to let her cut me off with her bullcrap, so I continue. About that, have you seen DS's face while she was showing her the picture? She was so proud. She wanted you to see it. She wanted you to support her, and yet you start lecturing DS. You basically tell her she can't think for herself, have a different opinion than you, and on top of that, you tell DS you own her. DS, tell your mum what you think about this situation. DS's voice isn't as strong as mine, but she says, I think it is unfair for me. I think I matter enough as a human to control my body and look the way I want to be. I want to be treated like a future adult and learn to make decisions by myself. And that was the last straw for IB. She storms off, yelling in the process, I'm going for a smoke and a drink. Not gonna lie, I feel so proud of myself for what I did. I think it was the right thing to do, and it was the first DS was able to speak for herself. I'm a proud sibling, guys. And so you should be, OP. That is amazing that you're standing up for her, and I'm glad that you're so powerful and able to be there as a rock in your sibling's life. Although I would recommend calling CPS and having that mother dealt with. Dear Lord, I have no words for her. Entitled parent tries to enter my apartment to measure the bedroom. So this happened 3 years ago. I was renting a basement apartment that I loved. My landlords were great, aunt and uncle of my childhood friend, and I lived there for 3.5 years. Halfway through, they told me they wanted to sell the place, but probably not that soon, since the husband was working on a commercial ship 9 months at the time. I just asked them to tell me when they decide to sell. Anyway, 13 to 14 months pass, and they decide to start the process. They introduce me to the realtors. Everything gets sorted out. Up to this point, everything is going great. Realtors give me 24-hour notice before they bring buyers. I can stay home during the showings or go about my business. I have no complaints about them or my landlords throughout the entire process. Then one day, I just got back from work and didn't feel like going out again. Realtors came with a family of 5 or 6. It was announced, I just forgot. So I decided to stay. Family consisted of mother, father, adult daughter, and 2 or 3 kids. Can't remember. Father was a piece of work. Now, thing is, I live in a touristy town on the Mediterranean coast. It was summer, people try to pull all sorts of cons here. Entitled father says, "I know you said someone lived here, but we hope to stay a couple of days to get the feel of the apartment." What? This place isn't for rent. OP already lives here. Well, I can't buy something just like that. But okay, obviously we can't stay the night. Sorry, no, you can't. I live here. He moves on, measures things left and right, wondering out loud if the large wardrobe will fit into the bedroom, how he wants to buy an apartment for his daughter because she wants to go to college here. Eventually, they pack up and leave for the beach. I saw them later. Beach was 2 minutes away from the apartment. The next day, there was no scheduled showings, so I decided to do one thing everyone does when they live right next to the beach: take a nap after work. But before my head even hit the pillow, I hear someone coming down the stairs. There were only 2 basement apartments, and my neighbors went away for a week. I get up and go to the door to spy, but before I even made it halfway there, someone rattles the doorknob, and then, 10 seconds later, start knocking. I was really confused and freaked out. I go to the other door, and lo and behold, it's entitled father from yesterday. I do not open my door. I say, "Who is it?" "It's me, entitled father. We were here yesterday?" "What do you want?" "I want to measure the space in the bedroom to see if my daughter's wardrobe will fit." "No, you're not getting in." "But I can't buy the place if I don't know. It's for my daughter." "Then call the realtor. They'll have all the measurements on file. I'm not letting you in. I'll buy this place and evict you." "Good luck. I have 3 months left on the lease. You can't do crap about that." My landlords told me that if the place sells before my lease is up, contract will state that I can't be evicted before my lease is up. Plus, I already had a place lined up. Entitled father starts cussing out and I hear him go away. I called landlords and realtors after that. They were all mortified and worried someone like that just came to my place, tried to let himself in, and threatened to evict me. Entitled father did not buy the apartment after all because landlords refused to ever deal with him again. Realtors told him it was sold. To this day, I believe their plan was to find a place to crash at for a few days for a free vacation under the pretext of buying the place for their daughter. I still had to improvise webcams around the apartment to keep an eye on it while I was at work for the remainder of my stay there. I spent the entire summer not feeling safe in my own home. I can't believe the cheek of some people. At least the realtors had sense and weren't money-minded. Realtors were amazing and very respectful of boundaries. Never brought people over the weekend, never came unannounced. To be honest, they weren't worried about selling the place or their commission. Apartment was being sold a little under market value, and it was sold like a week after I moved out. They definitely didn't have to suck it up for the sake of sale. Not only that, if they, the realtor, had been a little less sensible, they could have very well found themselves without a realtor license. I'm glad everything worked out. I actually reached out to them a year ago when I was looking for a long-term rental, and they did everything they could. But renting is a nightmare in that town due to many short tourist rentals and inflated prices on whatever is left. Let me guess, revenge? No, Zadar. Posted by user Zombie Pizza Chef, titled, "No Karen, your brat cannot have our cats." So this just happened today. We're trying to sell my current house, and so we had a showing. Usually, they last only about an hour, but our real estate called us and told us they wanted more time, which we agreed to, thinking they would want to buy it. We come back about 45 minutes later and see our real estate agent, their real estate agent, and a family in the driveway. The following conversation goes as followed. "Dear Lord, this formatting hurts my soul. We've got Mum, our agent, their agent, entitled Mum, quiet dad, and the brat, or spawn of Satan. Other agent says, I'm so sorry, there's a slight problem. What is, how much for your cats? Excuse me? Well, we were looking at your house, and my daughter loves cats, and she saw them and fell in love. So how much? Sorry, they're not for sale. And the brat daughter goes, Mommy, I want them. Look, I'll give you $500 for them both. I'm sorry, but they're not for sale. I hope this doesn't change your opinion about the house. I only want the cats. Well, then I'm sorry I wasted your time. We just walk towards the house at this point, assuming they're done. Entitled Mother says, Agent, talk to them and work it out. Their agent says, look, they're very valuable customers to our business and we really need to make this sale. Will you please consider throwing the cats in as a bonus? They're adjusted to the house and I'm sure the family would take great care of them. Absolutely not. They're our fur babies. Brat runs past my mum and runs into my house. We look at the Entitled Mother astonished. Laughing, Entitled Mother says, well, she won't leave till she gets what she wants. Wow, you're a terrible parent. Excuse me, you're the one who is teaching your kids to be selfish brats. At this point, we run in to find the brat covered in scratches and one very chunky, very fluffed up cat. Mummy, it hurt me, ooh-woo, crying, sad face. We're leaving. You will be hearing from my lawyer for this. Yeah, okay. Entitled Mother scoops up Brat and leaves in a huff. Her husband mouths sorry to us and turns and leaves. Sorry the format is god-awful, I'm just super annoyed. That's okay, OP. Thank you for the epic story. Posted by user Blau Amies, titled, My mother thinks she deserves half of my child support bonus payment to spend it for her own pleasures. So I live in Germany, where the government is planning to give everyone who is eligible of child support 300 additional euros over the course of 3 months due to the disadvantages of the corona crisis still going on. I already have my own flat, and I study, so I am still able to receive payment. For some reason though, my money always gets sent to my mother's bank account, and she sends it to me. It has worked out so far, but she usually sends me €10 less than what I'm supposed to receive. I never cared too much because I don't want to tramp about $10, so I gave my mum a call and asked her if she saw the news, and reminded her to send me the money, which would be 100 additionally each month for 3 months altogether. She suddenly said, well, I will take 150 of them. We both deserve it, don't we? I was shocked and asked her what she intends to spend it on. I could finally go on some short trips and buy expensive food, was her response. Just a short note, my mother has been jobless ever since I was born and refused to get a job till this day. She often cries about how I have more money than her and it's just unfair. So she's literally told me it's perfectly fine to just take half of the money that is supposed to be for me. Edit. Since this blew up, I want to clarify that I have my bank account, so please keep that in mind before posting. Posted by user Snufflebug, titled, Entitled Mum thinks her kid is entitled to our pygmy goats. My parents live in a big rural home, with a big open garden surrounded by forest. There is a single, one-way road along one side. They also own 4 baby pygmy goats, my dad's pride and joy. The goats live in a fenced-off corner of the garden, one side being against the road. Bear in mind, the fence is roughly 6 foot high. Because of where they live, they often get dog walkers and people walking past the garden, and naturally, they love to look at the pygmies. Usually this is no problem at all, as they all respect the property and just look from a distance, until this lady. Pygmies are loud. When they're scared, they scream to the high heavens. So when we heard them bleeding, we went to go check out if they were okay. That's when we found a random child in the pen with them. Our cast are entitled mother, entitled kid, and my father. So this entitled kid is running after the poor goats, trying to grab them and pick them up. And the mother, who is on the other side of the fence, just watches. And Dad says, "Excuse me, how and why is your child on our property? He wanted to pet the goats, so I lifted him over the fence." Entitled kid is now trying to climb back over the fence, which isn't working because it's pretty flimsy. Dad says, "I need you to leave right now. You're trespassing and stressing my pets out." "Ah, he's not doing anything. He's just playing. There's no sign saying we can't go in." "It's obvious this is private property. Leave, now, and never come back." "Some people are so selfish. My kid just wanted to pet them. Why are you being so rude to us?" Dad then lifts the child back over the fence, and the entitled mother says, "Don't ever touch my child. How dare you? Don't touch my pets. How dare you?" Entitled mother storms off, and now there's a sign on the fence saying, "This is not a petting zoo, no trespassing." Disclaimer, no goats were harmed during the making of this post, smiley face. Posted by user MadHatter555, titled, "Entitled Mother Tries to Strand Me in Nicaragua." This happened in 2007, but another post reminded me. I went on a mission trip sponsored by my former employer to Nicaragua to give eye exams and free glasses to people in need. After 2 weeks, I was exhausted and just wanted to get back to Colorado and take a hot shower and a nap. There was about 30 of us on this trip together. We board the plane and everyone gets seats except me. My boarding pass says 14E, middle seats. I'd prefer aisle or window to that, but I just want to get home. Get to my seat, and there's an infant sitting there. I'm tired, but I'm still polite, and say, "Excuse me, 14E is my seat." I flash my boarding pass to the guy in the window seat, and he shrugs at me and the kid and goes back to his book. The entitled mother on the aisle, 14D, pulls out her ticket. She says, "14D, this is my seat. Sit somewhere else." I'm not trying to sit in 14D, I'm trying to sit there. Point at her kid and say, "Because that's what my boarding pass says." And I show her the boarding pass again. She says, "Screw you, I paid for this seat. Sit somewhere else." That says 14D, mine says 14E. Did you pay for 1 seat or 2? Do you have another boarding pass for your son? Flight attendant arrives and says, "You need to take your seat, sir." "Ma'am, I can't sit down, there's a kid sitting in my seat. This man is threatening me and needs to be removed from the plane." "What? How did I threaten you?" "Sir, we can't depart until you take your seat. He should have to take the next flight for threatening me." If I remember correctly, there was 1 flight into Nicaragua and 1 flight out every 24 hours to and from the US. I pause and look between the flight attendant and the entitled mother, and I say to the flight attendant, "I'm having trouble locating my seat. Can you help me?" And I hand the flight attendant my boarding pass. The flight attendant hands me my boarding pass back and leaves. Meanwhile, the 30 people from the mission trip are trying to come to my aid, namely the lead chaperone, Janet. A brief thing about Janet: imagine an anime character that is sworn to fight for what is good and right and just, but that character is a god-level Karen. Janet's like, "Why are you still standing? What's going on? I'll talk to someone. Who do I need to talk to?" Almost all of our stuff got stolen when we got to the hotel in Nicaragua on the first day of the clinic. It's Book of Mormon, is that you? Passports, clothes, camera, shampoo. I had my passport and my camera on me, but I was one of the few. Janet hulked out at the hotel manager, and everything magically reappeared. I had seen her go nuclear, and I did not want to see it again inside an airplane. I say to Janet, "Hey, it's fine, little bit of confusion, nothing to worry about. I don't know how you can be so rude to me. Just take the next flight." I'm actually worried that Janet might overhear what's actually going on and yeet this lady and her kid off the plane, so I don't respond to her. Flight attendant returns with the head flight attendant, and the head flight attendant says, "Sir, you need to take your seat or we can't depart. I can't find my seat. I need assistance." And I hand over my boarding pass. Head flight attendant says to entitled mother, "Can I see your boarding passes, ma'am?" Entitled mother hands over a single boarding pass, and she says, "And the other one?" "What other one? I paid for this seat. He's rude and needs to take the next flight." Flight attendant and head flight attendant whisper. Flight attendant departs for the front of the plane. I'm pretty sure for security, which, FYI, airport security in Nicaragua is AK-47 toting army personnel. Me to head flight attendant say, "I just want to sit down and go to sleep." HFA just ignores me. Flight attendant returns and says, "Come with me, sir." Entitled mother says, "Enjoy your layover in Nicaragua, a-hole." I'm not taking the next flight. We moved an elderly woman into first class. You can have her seat. It's the first row after first class. I sit down in my seat with a bit more legroom and pass out. Don't open my eyes until we land in the States. And everyone lived happy ever after. While it was a good outcome for you and the elderly lady, I just wish someone would have stood up to the mother of the child instead of letting her get her way. It sounds like she's pulled this more than once, and too many have already caved to her behavior, thus reinforcing it. That being said, extra legroom and not having to sit next to a baby on an intercontinental flight, also a win-win. Posted by user Tillich360, titled, "In-law evicted us illegally." Backstory. My wife and I have been together for over 10 years. We have 2 children together. One is autistic and the other one is like me, with ADHD, ODD, OCD, and anxiety. In 2017, I was in a really bad car crash with my 2012 Chevy Volt, when it completely powered down, leaving me without control and sending me off the highway into a tree at 60 miles an hour. I did my best to stay on my feet and keep working, but over time, my back got worse and worse until October of 2018, when I got to work, I was physically unable to get out of my car. I went to one doctor after another, trying to figure out what we could do, and we tried everything. I was eventually diagnosed with thoracic degenerative disc disease, that and another weird bone issue that can't be fixed. I was out of work for 2.5 years, but my wife, being the saint that she is, kept us afloat as best we could. She's an office worker that works with attorneys and taxes, making an okay income, and I worked door-to-door sales for a national cable company, and I was making over $100,000 a year. Needless to say, getting knocked out of work killed our budget, and we needed to move to be closer to family. As we were searching, my wife's mother offered to buy a house and do a rent-to-own contract with us. Housing there in the Midwest is cheap, averaging under $900 a month. We agreed, and the whole family helps us move. Our house was a mess, me not being able to bend over, our kids being young, and we have 3 dogs. I was embarrassed to say the least, but it became apparent that as soon as I was unable to work, my wife's family wanted me gone. My wife even told me that they said that she should leave me and she would be better off with a man that isn't disabled. We move and all is going well. My kids are in school and getting all the support they need, making friends and overall loving it. Our autistic son hasn't attacked anyone or bit or hit or had a freak out. Us living closer to home, with my family's support and hers, we start to recover, but with me still not being able to bend over or even sweep the floor without it feeling like my spine is going to explode, makes it so our house is still a mess. I eventually try to find another sales job working for a car dealership. I lasted 19 days before having to quit. I get recommended to see a pain doctor locally and go to see them. I get shots, have MRI scans and other stuff, and nothing works. The doctor recommended a chiropractor. Now, I had grown up believing chiropractic stuff was a scam, or better yet, as told by Penn and Teller, bullpoo. However, I go, and my god was it painful, but I noticed I could move better. The chiropractor puts me on a schedule to go times a week for 6 weeks. I never miss an appointment and see the changes take effect quickly. I can put on socks again, I can move, I can walk more than a block. Best of all, I could make love to my beautiful wife again, but I still can't to this day pick something up off the floor without laying on the floor to get it. As soon as we moved into our new house, I ask about the rent to own, and my in-law says it's a family matter and not to worry about it, that my wife has it taken care of. Turned out, it was just verbal. In-law says that they will do the normal landlord stuff and will make repairs as needed, and remove a dead tree that looked like it was going to fall on the house at any day. Time passes, and we ask about the tree and repairs, and in-law says she will get them fixed when I move out. Not we, just I move out. I'm adopted, and acceptance means a lot to me, and family is a true gift, but I had never expected this and just walked away. More time passes, and our Chihuahua Dachshund Mix has found the extra bedroom as the perfect place to poop and pee, and though we keep the door closed, he can crawl through the air vent like a supervillain in a heist, but to leave poop instead of steal the royal jewels. This goes completely unnoticed, as we don't use that room and even have a padlock on it, because we only use it as storage and haven't needed to add or retrieve anything in that room. Over the 2 years, I have gained over 150 pounds, and my wife is right in the 200-pound mark, so we start walking and trying to get in shape. My wife decided we should get a treadmill and we could turn the extra room into a gym. We find one, and in-law helps wife bring it home. Wife gives in-law the key to the padlock, and she goes into the room. Screaming and crying happens, and in-law storms out of the house. The next morning being Sunday, my wife gets a call from her mother, saying her mother was coming over to clean our house. My wife tells her no, that it was 6 a.m. and we would clean the house. We didn't know our dog was using that room as a toilet. In-law hangs up on wife and leaves my wife in tears. I call in-law and tell her no means no, to not come over without 24-hour notice or unless invited. She hangs up on me. My wife has a panic attack and goes to bed. I tell her I'll deal with it. Sure enough, a few minutes later, a loud banging on our back door. I go to the door and tell her to go away. She says this is her daughter's house and that I'm not welcome and I needed to let her in. I tell her no and tell her if she doesn't leave, I will call the cops. She replies with, she will call the cops if I don't let her in. I tell her to call them and we will see who's right. Backstory about me personally. I graduated college with a degree in criminal justice and had worked security up until I met my wife and chose to have a safer life. I studied law and kept up with law enforcement trainings and studying the law as well. I know what a landlord is and isn't allowed to do, and since she had clearly cut me away from the family, I saw no reason for exceptions to be made. She pulled out her phone, paused and put it away. I told her to leave again, and she refused. I dialed 911. Yes, overkill when it's a small town, but I don't play games at 6 a.m. on a Sunday. I tell dispatch what's happening, and they say they will send an officer. She yells and screams, and eventually my wife comes down to face her. In-law explodes on wife for letting me call the cops and tells her a bunch of nonsense about her having to choose her or me. My wife tells her she chooses me. In-law leaves crying. I have a job interview the following day that turns into an instant job again in car sales, and I'm at the dealership until 9 p.m. that night. When I get home, I find my wife crying, eating a tub of ice cream and watching TV. I ask her what's wrong, and she explained that in-law and stepfather came over, yelled at her, and made her sign a contract for other bills her mother had helped us with in the past, raising our rent by $200 a month. No mention of me in the contract or anything. I call in-law and tell her we will not be doing that, as we are a team, and financial responsibility falls on both of us and must involve both of us. Wife also tells in-law she is siding with me again on this. The next day while I'm at work, my wife calls me crying and hysterical. She had been served at work a letter stating that as we didn't have a rental agreement, the landlord was evicting us in 30 days. Under Iowa law, if you have a month-to-month rental agreement or no agreement at all, the landlord can end it if they give 30 days notice. However, we had a rent-to-own contract, very different. I picked to stand our ground because we would win and start compiling as much evidence as I can, not only to win the case, but to seek damages for everything. My plan was to use the money from the damages to end up buying the house and totally saying blow off to the in-law. My wife tells me she doesn't want to fight and that we will move and cut ties with in-law. I tell her if she's sure, I'll go with it. We find a place in the next town over and move. Instantly, our kids have issues in school. This school was not ready for special needs kids, and overall, I would say the whole thing set our family back about another 2 years. We are stable now. I left the car dealership when COVID hit and went back to working security, so I would be an essential person and secure in pay. On top of all of this, another thing about in-law has always ticked me off. She plays the I'm a good Christian card all the time while speaking bad about minorities and homosexuality. She doesn't know that my wife and I are polyamorous, and before we had to move back home, we had a girlfriend that lived with us full-time for 3 years. When one of our friends was getting married and the wedding date also fell on a family gathering, in-law exploded on us, saying why would we go to a lesbian wedding when it means nothing to God, and asked what's wrong with people. I was about to open my mouth and spill the beans about our lifestyle when my wife gave me that look. In-law still doesn't know that her hatred of others affects us on a daily basis, and recently my wife started trying to patch up things, but I'm still treated like crap even though I'm working and supporting the family again. I really hate this woman, and wish when I caught COVID and was sick that I went over to visit her and gave her a big hug and spit right in her eye. She is truly the worst person I've ever met. Damn, OP, you really went off on them, sis. Damn. My mum's entitled friend thinks she can control my hobbies. So this story is a thing that happened a week ago, and I'm still mad. My mum decided to let us invite friends over again now that the government let us, with the pandemic, damn it. So my mum decided she would invite her friends over first. I mean, sure, why not? Little did I know that my mum was going to invite her extremely nosy friend. Let's call her Karen for obvious reasons. Anyways, Karen comes over and her and my mum start talking. So far, there's no problem. Then my mum goes to cook dinner, so of course, her being intrusive and nosy, Karen barges into my room without knocking. Note, I barely know this lady, and asks what I'm doing and stuff, the usual small talk. At this point, I'm not annoyed because I like conversation anyways, and she isn't saying anything harmful, so I start telling her what I'm doing. So here's the entitled part. Some backstory. Since a few months now, I've taken a strong interest in learning languages. I just find it to be a very fun and relaxing hobby, so it carried on for a while. So I tell her I'm learning Dutch, and that so far I've already learned Portuguese, thinking she would do the usual adult thing where she asks some questions and makes some small talk, But no. She starts saying stuff like, wow, you're learning all these languages, yet you can't even write in your own native language? I'm Pakistani, so technically Urdu is my native language, but I was born in Canada and only speak Urdu with my mother, so I'm extremely rough in terms of pronunciation and can't write. Now, I didn't think she meant badly, so I simply explain this is just a fun hobby I've taken a liking for, and learning writing in Urdu would be extremely difficult because it's totally different than any language I can already write, and it would be more frustrating than enjoyable. She proceeds to get mad at how learning other languages is slowly salvaging my heritage, or some BS like that. At this point, I don't see the need to continue this argument, so I simply respond, sure, I'll think of it, thinking that's the end of it. But no, it's not. She continues to tell me how I need to drop my current language project and prioritize my native language because I'm destroying my culture. Luckily, my mum saved me when she called us down for dinner. Once we started eating, Karen was still offended as to why I wasn't learning Urdu, and she was until she left. Once she left, my mum told me, "Sorry about that. She can be strange at times. I'll try to keep her away from you next time." Dang, I love my mum. Posted by user, I just want to be happy. Titled, Girl believes she should be dating my boyfriend because he used to like her before he even met me. So, for all of sophomore and junior year, my boyfriend had a crush on this girl. Let's call her Nee. They had classes together, and he would always flirt with her and ask her out, but she would always reject him. My boyfriend met me at the end of our junior year, and he instantly liked me. But at the time, I didn't have feelings for him and saw him as my best friend. We would always hang out with each other, and he would always post me on his stories when we hung out, which was every single day almost, which later I found out Nee would obsessively watch. And it wasn't until the end of our first semester of senior year when we started dating. Fast forward to the end of senior year when it's grad nights, senior Disneyland trip. My boyfriend was leaving for the army in a few months, so I said it was fine if he only hung out with his friends because I wanted him to make those memories with those friends he's had since kindergarten, and we had the rest of the summer to do things anyway. So I hung out with my best friend, let's call her Anna, and her friend group, which just happened to include Nee. Bit of background, for the past 2 years, Anna has always told me about Nee, who would always start drama, hurt her friends' feelings, make fun of them, used religion to justify calling them tramps, etc. But when I met Nee on grad night, I didn't really talk to her, but I thought she was nice and treated her nicely. For that entire day, I was alone with her for at max 30 minutes, and not once did the topic of my boyfriend come up. I didn't even know she was friends with my boyfriend, or that she even knew who I was, because I literally met her hours before. The next day, my boyfriend was acting weird to me, and finally he asked me, "Are you mad at me?" Me being confused as hell, I was like, "No, what? Why?" And he says, "Well, Nee told me that I ruined your grad night by not hanging out with you, and that she said that you told her that you were mad at me, and that I'm a bad boyfriend." I immediately call Anna and tell her what's up. She then tells me for the entirety of senior year, Nee was going around to my friends trying to find dirt on me, if I've screwed anyone over, backstabbed, bullied, etc., so she could tell my boyfriend so he would break up with me. But since I was a total loner and didn't talk to anyone, that backfired on her, so she started making up lies. There was like 3 days me and my boyfriend were on a break, and she said while she was in their 6th period class, my boyfriend who sat next to her leaned over and told her he really wanted to kiss her, and said he told her other stuff like that. At first, I believed it, but then I realized my boyfriend wasn't even in school for the times she said he told her those things. Anna said for the entire time me and my boyfriend were dating that Nee would always flirt with him, and my boyfriend either noticed and didn't respond, or just didn't realize it at all and didn't respond, so she saw no reason to tell me because he never reciprocated that behavior to her. Nee would always screenshot text conversations with my boyfriend out of context and want Anna to show me to make me jealous, but when Anna would see the entirety of their conversations, it's extremely obvious he wasn't flirting. Nee would tell her friends how much she wanted to grind her ass on my boyfriend at school dances, and when her friends called her out on it, she'd always be like, "Oh, I always forget that he has a girlfriend." Finally, she snapped and told her friend group / Anna that I'm a tramp for stealing her man, and that because I friend-zoned him for like 8 months, I didn't deserve him, and that she deserves him because she actually cares about him, and he liked her way before he even met me, so she should get first dibs. Like, girl, you friend-zoned him for almost 2 years, of course he moved on. You missed your chance. Too bad. After that situation, where many other things happened, her friends finally realized what a horrible person she was and ditched her, so now she doesn't have any friends, but she still has the audacity to tell the one friend that stuck by her that I'm the reason she has no friends, like she wasn't a horrible person and did it to herself. My situation just happened to be the last straw for her friends to stop hanging out with her. Joke's on her. Me and my boyfriend are still going strong a 1.5 years after that whole thing happened. Posted by user CrewDog3950, titled, Entitled customer demands a refund, and karma got him in the end. This happened a few years ago while I was working as an assistant store manager for a big box automotive retail store. I wrote this down right after it happened. No names were used, of course. English is my first language. Apologies for any formatting errors, and this is a bit on the long side. TLDR at the end, so let's get on with it. Me is me, the assistant store manager. CW is co-worker, SM is store manager, DM is district manager, EC is the entitled customer, PO is police officer, and the DA is the district attorney. I was working the afternoon/evening shift as I often did. It's just a normal day and customers are coming and going. Early on in my shift, EC comes into the store and picks out a set of headlights that he thinks will work for his car. I offered to check and see if they were the right ones, as I didn't want him to be inconvenienced to have to do a return later if he had picked out the wrong item. He declined and said he was in a hurry and he knew that he had the right item and to stop wasting his time. I cashed him out and he went on his way. Before leaving, I informed him that our company policy was that if any electronic item were opened, that it could not be returned. About an hour later, EC comes back to the store demanding a refund that I sold him the wrong product. I again informed him of the policy and asked if he had opened the product and tried to install it on his vehicle, to which he said yes. He then made a smart-assed comment about, "Don't you know you have to open it to see if it works?" In no way, shape or form did I have an attitude when I told him that if he would have let me do my job and look up the part, that he wouldn't be in this situation. Apparently, this ticked him off. He left the store for a few minutes, I assumed to calm down, then came back and told me that he bought the right product at our competitor and wanted his bloody money. I told him that I could not complete a return for him. I pointed at the return policy on the counter. He said he didn't give an F, he wanted his effing money, or there would be hell to pay. I told him he was no longer welcome at the store and he needed to leave, to which he refused. I told him that if he didn't leave, I would call the police and have him arrested for trespassing and causing a disturbance. He said, "F you, call him, I don't give an F, I want my $20. Unbeknownst to him, a co-worker was already on the phone with the police dispatch, telling them that we had an unruly customer in the store and refused to leave. EC finally realized he wasn't going to bully me into giving him the return and started to walk out while saying, "Don't let me catch your B-ass outside of here. I'm going to, shoot you, dear Lord." Co-worker was telling dispatch everything that was happening. Entitled customer finally left, and a few minutes later, I heard the crackling of a police radio in the distance. Co-worker was telling the police officer that I was the one involved and to talk to me about the incident. Police officer came over to me and asked for and ran my credentials, also asking for the details of the incident. I told police officer what happened and told him we have it on security camera also. I offered to show him the incident on and give him a copy as we would be pressing charges. Police officer looked at the footage of the incident and took a copy for evidence purposes. He wrote the report and had me, co-worker and a few others co-workers write statements as to what happened. Police officer asked if I knew the entitled customer's name. I told him I did and could also provide his address and phone number as it was in our computer system for warranty purposes on other items. When I told police officer entitled customer's name, he said, "I know who he is. He's a bad dude and do not take this threat lightly." I told him I wanted to press charges for terroristic threats, trespassing, and disorderly conduct. As per company policy, I had to write an incident report for the trespassing and the police officer showing up. I also notified the store manager and district manager immediately after the police officer left. Towards the end of the shift, police officer came back to the store and informed me that they arrested EC on outstanding warrants and the new charges. He told me that the DA would be in touch with me about testifying in court. A few months later, the DA called me and asked for me to come into their office to have a recorded interview and to bring any witness statements that I had, and I did as requested. Once EC's court date got closer and I was preparing myself to go testify, I received a call from the DA telling me the charges were dropped, that I didn't have to testify in court. I asked why EC's charges were dropped, and he told me that EC had made a plea deal and that the charges from his warrants were going to put him in prison for a long time. Being curious, I asked DA what the charges were from EC's warrants, and he told me, I cannot release that information at this time. I asked when his court date was going to be, that I wanted to try and be there. Luckily for me, I wrote the schedule at work, so when I found out the date, I gave myself that day off. I went to court and found out that EC had been charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit murder, felon in possession of a firearm, and all the charges that go with it, and multiple drug-related charges. He was found guilty on all charges and is currently serving life without parole. After the court case, I thought to myself that somehow I had a hand in helping catch this guy. Police officers didn't know where he was until I gave them EC's address. But to think that they got the information over a $20 return that couldn't be made? I know eventually the police officers would have caught him most likely over something stupid like a blown headlight. Karma wins again. Posted by user Val0719, titled, The Time I Supposedly Invited a Complete Stranger to Dinner. One day I was grocery shopping and I had gotten to the checkout. I loaded all my groceries onto the belt and was watching the cashier do her thing when the wild Karen made herself known. Apparently, she did not approve of the bottle of cooking sherry that I had planned to add to my pot roast. She says, "You shouldn't use that stuff. You should go get real sherry. That stuff just tastes terrible." Okay. Karen starts in criticizing the other groceries she doesn't approve of, going on and on about how this is nasty and that is awful. I had finally had enough and say, "I'm sorry, I forget sometimes, but when were we introduced? I only ask because I honestly can't remember inviting you to dinner." The cashier got this huge grin. Karen moved to a different checkout. Edit, I live in a dry county. It's not really worth it to drive 2 counties over to find a liquor store. Not for pot roast. Posted by user TPABARAYS, titled, Entitled Grandma Lets Toddler Walk Across Our Property and Jump into Our Pool. So this was like 2 years ago, middle of summer in Florida. All ages were at the time of the story. My 17 male, brother 13 male, had a bunch of neighborhood friends over, ranging from 9 to 14 in age, mostly rowdy guys. They were swimming in our pool behind our house. The pool is maybe 6 foot from the house on 2 sides of it, and is screened in. Since these aren't my friends, I was just vibing on the couch inside, but I could see the whole thing go down from where I was sitting. I also should note I live in a small middle-class subdivision and pretty much everyone has a pool. So a grandma in her 60s, we'll call her Entitled Grandma, from down the street, had her grandson, 3-ish, also known as Entitled Kid, out on a walk. Had a leash and everything, you know? The kid heard my brother's friends and decided to check it out. Entitled Grandma decides to let him walk all the way back there, across our property. My mum, 50 female, was back there getting everyone towels and stuff. Entitled Grandma opens our screen door for Entitled Kid, and he goes running in and jumps. My mum saw it and caught him before he could touch the water. Mind you, he's not in appropriate swimwear. She then tells Entitled Grandma that he can't go in the pool, and please get off our property. Entitled Grandma asks why he can't swim with the other kids. My mum explains that he can't because these kids are 9 to 14 years old, and her kid is 3, so it can be a bit dangerous. Also, it's her property and she said so. EG was not having it and told the kid to jump in. My mum blocked him, and they finally left grudgingly. Posted by user Taito Quartich, titled, Cousin and Uncle Thought They Were Entitled to My Grandpa's Money. 3 stories in one about my uncle, his son, my cousin, and their feelings of entitlement towards my grandpa for you. Can't really do a TLDR easily, but basically my uncle and cousin feel they deserve my grandpa's money without any effort to earn it. Background. My grandpa is a very stoic ex-military man. He's not great at showing emotions. A one-handed hug is the best you'll get, but if you're in trouble, he'd fight to the death for you. He's done very well for himself financially over the years, but believes in helping people to help themselves, not just giving free handouts. Story 1. When I first got my driving license, I had enough money for a small old banger, but my grandpa offered to loan me £1,000 to get a better car. The deal was that I had to put at least £90 a month into a savings account for a year. At the end of the year, I would give my grandpa the £1,000 back, and I could keep any extra and any interest it had earned. 2 months later, my cousin got his provisional and wanted to get a small moped. My grandpa made him the same deal. At the end of the year, I went round to my grandpa's and asked him for his bank details to pay him back. He asked for proof I had the money, and I showed him my bank statements. He told me because I kept the agreement, I didn't have to repay him, and £1,000 was my reward for showing him that I could budget and save properly. 2 months later, my cousin's year was up. My grandpa had to chase him about it, at which point my cousin mentioned that I'd got to keep my money, so it was only fair that he got the same. My grandpa told my cousin that if he'd done the same, he would also be allowed to keep the £1,000. It turned out, my cousin had only been putting $20 to $25 a month aside, and once he'd heard about my gift, he'd taken the whole lot out of his savings and spent it. My grandpa told him that because he hadn't kept the agreement, he now had to repay the whole lot, and for the next year, my cousin had to pay £90 a month directly to my grandpa. Story 2. Following the events of Story 1, my cousin was a bit bitter towards my grandpa and me initially, but did apologize after about a year for acting entitled to keep the £1,000, which my grandpa accepted, and they moved on. Over the next year or so, my cousin got into a lot of debt. He got evicted from several places for not paying rent, and got several CCJs, county court judgments, against him. He racked up a load of credit card debt, and got the bailiffs chasing him. He then tried to trick our other aunt in signing as a guarantor on a payday loan with ridiculously high interest. When my grandpa found out about all of this, he took him out for a drink and offered to loan him one lump sum to clear all of his debts, and then my cousin would only have to repay my grandpa each month interest-free. My cousin agreed to this, took the money, and promptly spent it on a new motorcycle for himself. My grandpa cut him off after that, and to this day they still don't speak. My cousin maintains that he was entitled to the money as we're family. Story 3. About 2 years ago, my grandpa had a heart attack and needed a pacemaker. He's since recovered and is doing great, but at the time it really shook him. He opened up to the family about his will for the first time. My granny and grandpa had 3 kids, my mum, my aunt, and my uncle. My granny passed away when I was a child, and my mum died when I was a teenager. My grandpa has since remarried, but he and my step-gran agreed to keep their personal finances separate, as they both have their own businesses and investments, etc. My grandpa told us that the money is being split 30% each to my mum and my aunt, 20% to my uncle, and 20% split evenly between all kids and grandkids. The reason my uncle gets less is because he got into so much debt in his 20s that he almost had to declare bankruptcy, and my grandpa had to bail him out. My mum's share is to be split between my 2 sisters and I. My uncle immediately kicked off, saying that he should get the same as his 2 sisters. When my grandpa shut that down, he tried to claim that my mum's share would be split between him and my aunt, also rejected. His final claim was that my sisters and I shouldn't get any share of the kids' 20% if we're getting our mum's inheritance. My grandpa told him to shut the hell up or he's getting nothing. We don't really talk to my uncle or cousin anymore. Hope you guys enjoyed. Sorry it turned out so long. Dear Lord. Posted by user FredZRed. Titled, Sexist Male versus Disabled Female in a Hardware Store. I put him in his place. I'm a 29-year-old disabled female, incomplete quadriplegic with hand and arm function, and I love going to the hardware store. I don't look like the sort of person that would know her way around a hardware store, but I do. I'm always painting or making things like shelves and tables, and any furniture my friends or family needs. Most of the people at my local hardware store know me by my name, and very rarely ask me if I need help finding anything, as they know that I know these stores inside out. The only time I need help is when there's something that's too high for me to reach. On one of my outings to the hardware store, I was making a bookshelf for my friend's kid. I went in search of screws and dowels to assemble the shelf. There was a man in this same section looking lost. He was probably mid-40s. Let's call him Ken. I say, "Hey mate, can I help you find anything? I want to build a floating shelf, but I don't know. Well, you won't know anyway." Well, first off, you're looking at plastic sealed plugs, which is usually used for, and I was cut off. I think I'll find someone who actually knows what they're talking about. He walked away, and a few minutes later, returned with an employee, who was Steve. So Steve Owen's like, "Okay, so what you planning?" "Well, I want to build a floating shelf, but I'm not sure what I need." Steve, noticing me, says, "Oh, hey OP, what was it you used to make that floating shelf last month?" Sorry buddy," addressing Ken. "This isn't my usual department. If you want to know what you need, you should ask OP. She knows more about this department than me." As I was saying, if you want the shelf to hold, plastic plugs won't do a great job if the shelf is going to hold weight, and it will probably rip the plywood. You need to know where the studs are in the wall, and if they're metal studs, you need the screws for metal. A floating shelf will need brackets, and you should use timber that won't warp, so MDF is the best. Ken looked so confused at my explanation, and I could see Steve trying to hold back a smirk. I spent the next half hour trying to help him get everything he needed, and explaining how to find a stud and what timber to use. I hope he learnt not to judge a book by its cover. Your gender doesn't show your abilities or your knowledge. Entitled Aunt wants me to support my entitled mum. Not sure if super entitled to the outside, but to me, they are both entitled pieces of crap that think they do no wrong. So, this happened last year. A little backstory. My mum has mooched off of people her entire life. From purposely getting pregnant with me when she was 17, by lying to my dad that she was on the pill, to living with my grandparents the last 25 years after my dad divorced her when I was 3. There's a lot of stories I could go into, but suffice to say that she only wants people to take care of her from money to cleaning, and thinks she does no wrong and she's the victim. Often screaming at my grandparents when they ask her to get a job to help since they had declining health and medical bills piling up. She would say things like, "I do a lot around here. I pay for some of the food," with her food stamps, or "everyone always blames me for things," and goes on a tangent trying to guilt trip and bully. My granddad, now that my grandmum has passed, 3 years ago now, there's a story here too about how she declined quickly from lack of care thanks to these people, wouldn't put up with it anymore, and sold his house to move into a nursing home, leaving my mum, her other 2 teen kids, aunt, her husband and kids, and my uncle, who was probs autistic to be honest, without some place to live. This was finalized about 4 months ago. My mum with 2 kids is now living in a crappy, leaking, barely functioning camper in a Walmart parking lot. My dad has tried his best to shield my brother and me from most of the insanity growing up, even spending $20,000 in legal fees to get full custody. But it doesn't stop her from asking for money, trying to crash at our places, etc., etc. Eventually, I moved to a different state, and she still doesn't have my address. So, on to the entitlement tale. 1 year ago, I got a text from my aunt. It reads as follows. "I'm going to be a little harsh with you right at this moment. You and your brother need to stop depending on everyone to take care of your mother. Dad will be moving into an independent living facility within the next month, and she is using Dad living for free here and not contributing in any way. OP here. She's doing the same fudging thing. The house stinks in the area where she lives, and it reeks of stale cigarettes and foot fungus and BO. She needs to get her act together, and if need be, you'll need to help her get it together. It has come to the point where there are arguments constantly about her nastiness. Dad being in the hospital for the last few days, and now at a rehabilitation center. He needs to have it stress-free at this house, and he needs to be able to sell this house. The one complaint of people that would come to look at this house was the smell that was in the house. and that should never ever be something that is complained about in a house that is being showed to sell. I apologize if this seems rude, but at this point I don't really know what else to do. You and your brother really need to step up and start taking care of your mother some way, shape, or form. Your mother is always boasting that you make $70,000 a year, but yet you never help her out. You are to take care of your parents just like they're supposed to take care of you. If at some point in your life you devoted your life to God, you are still a Christian, whether or not you live that way or not, you are sealed for the day of redemption. If she doesn't find a way to get out of this house within the next week or so, she will be without a house. I'm sorry, but that is the cold, honest truth. She has a car, but she won't fix it. I understand that it is an easy fix, but she has too good of a thing with her free taxi service in Bryan. The truth of the matter is that she will not have a place soon. Brother needs to help where he can, and so do you. If you want to start a fight in this house, then complain to your mama. But I hope you don't, and you do the right thing. Now, understand that my brother and I have spent our lives trying to make something of ourselves. My brother just got on his feet and a good job in his early 20s. I just moved to a different state and started getting my life back together after some incidents. I'm 27 at the time. My aunt does the same crap that my mum does. She has 2 kids there and a husband. She refuses to work and thinks she's better than everyone and really annoyingly religious. I decide to not text back. At the time I was furious because she knows how hard we've worked to be where we are and still is asking us to support our entitled mum. So I decided to copy and paste the text to my dad. Here's where some crap gets ugly. This is his text to my aunt. Sorry for errors in this part. He's not a great texter, lol. Hi aunt, it's Dad. Sorry to hear about your dad. He's a good man and I've always liked him no matter what's going on. He was always nice to me. Now, that being said, it's very sad what's going on with Mum and her kids. Although she has had plenty of time to get her crap together and did nothing, I have done everything in my power to make sure that my kids didn't get sucked down by her, and told them this day will come and she will not leech off of them. Well, I didn't raise my kids to be dumbasses, unlike your parents did. Sorry, but the truth is that it's their fault that every one of you are fudging stupid. I mean, all 4 of you are fudging worthless and stupid as frick, and I saved my kids and helped them to have a good life, and it's not their responsibility to raise their worthless ass mum. It's sink or swim, and I would advise you to put her on the street and let her swim on her own. But don't guilt trip my kids, which are fully aware that this day was coming, and they are no. They aren't dumb enough to let that happen to them. That stupid tramp will suck the life out of my kids, and that crap isn't happening. So leave my kids out of it and put her on the street where she belongs. I didn't raise stupid kids, and both of them are smarter than all of your dumbasses put together, so take your guilt trip and shove it up your ass. Have a nice fudging day. After that, I think my aunt took an exception to the text and absolutely blew up my phone, saying, I don't deserve this treatment. Is this what I get as your aunt? You've really become selfish. Then she started talking about how God loves me and crap, and this went on for days. It's been a year later, and I have not texted her back. I will not get dragged into the toxicity and support my able-bodied mother who doesn't want to do anything but get handouts. There are a lot more stories, past and present. Let me know if anyone cares to hear them. It's entertaining at least. Posted by user SilverSniper512, titled, Entitled Teacher Can't Make Up Her Mind and Specifically Harasses Me. So I'm not sure if this is entitled. To me it was, so let me know what you guys think. In 6th grade, in a class of 6-7 splits, my teacher had to leave for maternity leave, and we got a new temporary teacher. I'll call her T. T had 2 kids, one a year older and one a year younger than me. The kid who was a year older was in my class as a grade 7, and when I was in grade 7, her younger kid was in my class too. T started out being really sensitive and always favored the grade her kid was a part of, and when I was grade 7, she favored the grade 6s. For a trip, she took them to a Toronto Maple Leafs game, baseball. They took us bowling and to a workout place where most of the time we were doing the workouts, and it was not the easy stuff. Now, I don't know what grade this was, but she gave us work, and said to the class to not bother her, and if you need help, ask your elbow partner. So I was going through my work and I got stuck. So I turned to my friend directly beside me, and we started talking quietly about the work that I had trouble with. The teacher got upset with me and said if I needed help, ask her, which really confused me. She just told the entire class not to ask her and to ask your partner. So I went up to her and asked for help. She got even more angry and said, "Can't you see I'm busy? Ask your elbow partner." So I responded with, "I did, but you said..." And she cut me off angrily and told me to sit down. I forgot what I did then, whether I asked my friend again or I just struggled through it. I don't know if she just hated me, hated our group, or just hated kids, because there was another time she specifically targeted me on something that all teachers I've had allowed kids to do, which I'll mention quickly below. So I was finished my work, and T said if you're done, do something quietly. So as someone who loves doing art, I pulled out my sketchbook that I loved and was expensive for me at the time, and 1/4 filled with art and started drawing. She, for some reason, without warning, took it from me and said I could have it back at the end of the day. But when that time came, she still didn't give it to me. Why? I don't know. She didn't tell me or I forgot. My parents had to contact the principal to get her to give it back to me, and my parents gave her hell for it. Posted by user TXP titled, "My teacher got mad because I have a VPN so she can't see my screen." Okay, so my school has a system in place that they can view the screens of students, but here's the thing. My computer has a VPN so they can't. Originally, I didn't think this would be an issue until I got this email. Our cast are T for teacher, OP is me, P is principal. Teacher through email says, "Hello OP, I have come to the conclusion that we can't view your screen. We are very concerned if you're actually doing your work or cheating. Please fix this issue ASAP. Thanks, teacher." I say, "Hello, teacher. The reason you're unable to view my screen is because I have a VPN in place to protect people from stealing my info, or in your case, viewing my screen. Well, that's unacceptable. You must turn it off so we know you're doing your work. My apologies, but I'm not able to turn it off. And even if I could, my parents wouldn't allow me. No, you have to turn it off or get rid of it. If this problem continues, I'll report you to the principal." As I said before, I can't. I can send a video of my work, but that's it. No, you must get it off. You have 2 days or I'm reporting you. I stopped messaging her back after this. 2 days later, principal messages me and says, "Hello OP, teacher has informed me you were rude to her and wouldn't listen. Would you like to explain?" "No," and I sent screenshots. Thank you. I'll have a conversation with her and feel free to continue using the VPN. It's really not a big deal. I'm not sure what happened after that, but she stopped bothering me, so I'm pretty sure I'm fine, but I don't know. Edit. Thanks to all who commented and liked. It means a lot, but I'm just here to clear some things that seem to be confusing. 1. It's not the school's laptop, it's mine. 2. I have no idea what the VPN does, or what VPN it is, or if it's even VPN not allowing her to see my screen. 3. I live in the US. I guess there's different laws to other places or something like that. If there's anything else you need clarification on, I'd be happy to respond to your comment. Posted by user Charlie A, titled, "Karma is a Birth." Usual mobile stuff. This is a story from a close friend of mine. Sarah's the friend, Karen is who you think they are. On to the story. When the craziness was happening, here in Australia, at one point they said we could go out for exercise, as well as necessary items. Sarah owns a Labrador puppy, and she took it to the park where there's an off-leash area. Bonnie, the pup, bounded up to say hi to a man taking a walk, and he tried to kick it, then gave Sarah an earful about it not being on a leash. She pointed out the sign saying she didn't have to be, and for him to get lost. A little further along, Bonnie saw another dog accompanied by a Karen, and as pups do, bounded up to say hi. Karen had a stick and hit Bonnie. Sarah told Karen off in very colourful terms, picked Bonnie up and turned to walk away. Now, this is an off-leash area that is next to the local river, and in the last 6 months, trees have fallen across and into the river. Karen decided to also let her dog go for a swim, with the leash still attached. Her dog was only tiny, a chihuahua or something, and the current grabbed it and dragged it under the log, and the dog was stuck. Karen had to go in fully clothed to get the dog. The water would have been freezing cold, as we've had temps of 17 degrees / 62 degrees Fahrenheit during the day at the lowest. She came out drenched and angry with a shivering dog in her arms. Sarah saw what happened and walked away muttering, "Calm as a tramp, love." Edit: Chihuahuas aren't always horrible, but from what I've read, the small dogs have the highest percentage to be biters. My folks have a small dog, and she'll lick you to death instead. Always depends on the owner. Posted by user Little Motion, titled, "Karen tried to get a free hotel stay with a lawsuit." For context, I'm a 22-year-old woman, but I've been told I look around 17. I work for a boutique hotel and resort as a front desk supervisor. Our resort is separated into 3 buildings: our hotel, our pools and spa, and our restaurant. I'm used to pretty high maintenance people for the most part, and I've worked in customer service since leaving high school, so not a lot bothers me, and I can usually diffuse stressful situations easily. Basically, I've seen my fair share of Karens. I'm not sure how it is at other hotels, but at my hotel, reservations that are made for the day as check-in are treated with a bit more security since we've been scammed before. It's a security policy to make a copy of the driver's license at check-in in case the credit card turns out to be stolen. That way we have a picture of the guest. Today we had a same-day reservation come through a third party, something like Expedia or Priceline, which was no biggie. When the guest comes in, she seems nice enough. No typical Karen haircut or anything like that. I go through the motions, ask to see her ID, and to get a credit card for incidentals. She hands them over, and I set the ID on our scanner. "What are you doing?" Or, "I'm just making a copy of your ID for our reservation." "You can't do that." I thought, then took the ID out to double check that it wasn't a military ID, which is illegal to copy in the US. It was a regular state driver's license. "I'm sorry, ma'am, it's a security policy. We do this with all same-day reservations. You think I'll scam you? You treat my people like this? My mother is disabled, and you're making her wait in the car." To clarify, she was of Hispanic or Latina descent, one of the two. "No, ma'am, we do this with every same day." She cuts me off. "Get me your manager." I sigh and radio my manager to the front desk. Once she's there, Karen goes into this long rant about how we were stealing her personal information and how it was against the law to make copies of a person's ID. My manager looked at her, then at me. "She's the woman on the ID. Just go ahead and check them in." I did as I was told and checked the group of 4 into one of our handicap-accessible rooms. These rooms were bigger, with low-profile beds and roll-in showers for wheelchairs. Around an hour later, Karen called the desk asking for an extra blanket, asking me to turn up the thermostat for her because she couldn't figure it out, asking for extras of the free coffee in the room and whatever else she could get for free. No biggie, that's what I'm here for. Now here is where I nearly snapped. Later in the evening, she called me asking if we had a step stool for her mother to use to get into bed. Now, her mother was around my height at 5'7", and these beds were low profile already, but she was, for lack of better words, extremely overweight. So I believed it may be a bit more difficult for her to get from her motorized scooter onto the bed. I let them know we didn't have a step stool in this building, but that I would be happy to call the spa and pool to see if they had one we could use. The girl I spoke to at the desk told me they had step tools in the locker rooms, but she didn't think we could use them. She asked around, and her managers said that they didn't have any extra stools. I called Karen. "I'm sorry, it doesn't look like we have any stools on property for guests' use in the rooms. For your inconvenience, I'd be happy to give you a meal voucher for dinner." She huffed. "You have trash cans at your desk, right?" "Yes, ma'am, I have one trash can." "That means you have others in the building we can use." I paused, trying to figure out how that tied into our issue. I'm sorry, you do have 2 in your room, right? Well, yes, but they're small and not sturdy enough. If we double up, we can use that. Ma'am, you can't use our trash cans as step stools. Don't tell me what I can or can't do. You have 2 of those trash cans, don't you? Well, not for that purpose, no. OP, you have empty rooms, don't you? We do. Here's what you're going to do. You will go to those rooms and get me however many trash cans I need. No, ma'am, I'm not. That made her mad. She says, excuse me? Those plastic trash cans are waste baskets for bathrooms. Even stacked up, they aren't made to hold the weight of an adult. That poses a risk for your mother, and if she fell off and got hurt, or if they broke and she cut her leg, that would make us liable. It's a major safety hazard. You know you're breaking the law by not making this room handicap accessible? The beds in those rooms are low profile and up to standard. She apparently didn't care and cut me off again, asking to be transferred to the manager. I let her know I was acting manager since the woman she had spoken to at the check-in had gone home for the night and wouldn't be in for 2 days. You can't be a supervisor or manager. You're too young. Ma'am, I'm 22. No, you're not? Okay. I told her that I would be happy to help her to come up with another solution. Call her at home. I'm sorry? You're going to call your manager at home, she demanded. I can try to reach her. No, you're going to reach her. And she hung up. No, I didn't get through to my manager. It was late into the night at that point. Of course I didn't. So I sent one of our maintenance men to the storage room, had him clean off one of his work stools, and had him take it to her. Was it clean enough? Of course not. But she took it. I'll sum up the rest of tonight's drama since this post is long enough. Karen decided to ignore our non-smoking policy and smoked weed inside of the room, leading to complaints from other guests. When security confronted her, she told them she would sue us for harassment because it was medical. We allowed her to smoke on her balcony. She then threatened us for breaking a law because we didn't have a snack vending machine on property. After many other complaints, she called me telling me to call my manager to comp her room for her trouble. I told her I wouldn't call due to the time that I was, again, active manager, but that if she would like, I would be happy to put all of tonight's events into an email for her. I'll write an update if anything happens tomorrow night. TLDR, Karen tries suing my hotel for being racist and not having enough snacks for her midnight munchies. Posted by user Schmidtface, titled, He Thought He Was Entitled to Laughter. A couple of years ago, my mother died, tragically, unexpectedly, at the young age of 50. It was a horribly traumatizing night and few weeks for my whole family. I have 4 siblings, 3 of which were young teens at the time. As you can imagine, I was not in the best headspace for a while after this, but a girl has to pay the bills. So after 2 weeks off, I went back to one of my jobs at a grocery store. It was my second shift back there. I was working the register around 7 at night. A middle-aged white man and his 11-year-old son came through my line. The man started out fine, then proceeded to wink at me and make a stupid joke. For the life of me, I can't remember the joke. It was something anyone in the service industry has heard hundreds of times. It isn't ringing up? Oh, must be free, ha ha ha. What I do remember is I was at the end of my 8-hour shift and still emotionally decimated. I didn't laugh, just nodded and continued ringing his groceries up. The silence that followed his joke was deafening. Then, really? Not even a damn word? He then turned to his son and said, "Some people have no sense of humor. Don't even try with them. That's why they work places like this." I feel bad for the son that will grow up being just as poisonous. Posted by user Goobs McGee, titled, Neighbor is ticked catnip is taking over her yard after I warned her not to plant it. We moved in a year ago and have been friendly with the neighbors. I now understand why people are no longer friendly with neighbors in this day and age. One is a creep, who upon meeting, I told my husband to never leave me alone with. Hubs didn't believe me until his wife left him because of some crazy church affair crap. The others were great, until they weren't. We bought this house because it had over 1,000 square foot of landscaped, beautiful garden beds. It had been neglected for 3 years, so it took me hundreds and hundreds of hours to clean it up. And now? Breathtaking. My neighbor noticed I was working on the garden and told me how much she wanted to put in a garden. Anytime I was splitting hostas or lilies, I made sure to offer them to her, which she happily accepted. I started noticing she was placing them in bad spots, like places that just didn't make sense, no overall design, not in the sun condition. Whatever, not my problem. I was going to toss them anyway. She asked me for tips, and I suggest making a rough plan of the beds before buying things. She ignored that, and continued to place things in haphazard spots. Whatever, she can do her. She doesn't need to follow advice. Well, then came the catnip. We both have cats, and it can be a pretty and sustainable addition to the garden when contained. Catnip spreads fast. It gets huge and just keeps going. She asked for some, and I was nervous. I should have followed my gut. I gave her some, but this time I wasn't subtle in my advice. I told her, you cannot plant this in the ground. It needs to be contained somehow. Pot, garden edge. I probably said it 3 times. Well, she didn't, and I saw it spreading and spreading closer to my lot. So I went to Home Depot and grabbed some garden edge and lined my fence with it. No way was I letting it into my yard. So it spreads and spreads, and she thinks it's just so beautiful until it's out of control. And she's trying to pull it out, but it just keeps coming back, and she's unwilling to put in the hours or money to get rid of it. So she gives up, and it takes over her lawn, and the 3 other neighbors. They're ticked because they are constantly fighting with it now. One day, we were all chatting at the fence line, and she told everyone it was my fault. I was shocked, and I asked, how so? And she said that it was my fault for giving it to her, and I must have some other type because it doesn't spread. Now she's demanding I fix her and the neighbors' yards. Luckily, they laughed her off and took my side, but no more free plants for you. Christian holier-than-thou entitled mother tries to manipulate me. I gave her a taste of her own medicine. This story happened earlier this week. To preface this, ever since the COVID lockdown, my church has been meeting online via live stream. This has extended to small groups, which are now done through Zoom meetings. This particular week was much like the others in terms of small groups, Bible talk, cracking jokes, and discussing pop culture. However, joining us this week was my friend's auntie from out of town, the entitled mother of the story, who, from what I heard, had a tendency to have a holier-than-thou demeanor. At one point of the chat, we got to the topic of hobbies. I took a moment to discuss my hobby of gaming, my big mistake of the story. I talked about my gaming collection of different gaming consoles, SNES, Nintendo 64, GameCube, PS1, 2, 3, Wii, Switch, and Game Boy Cube, and games that I've collected over the years, which my friends found to be fascinating. So, on to the story. The cast are OP me, entitled mum, the friend's aunt, and my friend. So about 40 minutes in, about the small group, I get a phone call from my friend's phone number. I picked it up, only to be greeted by his aunt, who says, "Hello, OP." Entitled mother, what a surprise. Well, I'm calling you from friend's phone because I wanted to talk to you about something. Okay, what do you want to talk about? During the small group, you mentioned that you have a collection of video games and video game systems. Yeah, what about them? Well, you see, it's just that strong Christian men like you shouldn't be wasting time playing video games. You should be dedicating your time towards getting married, starting a family, and teaching them the ways of God and the Bible. I'm dumbfounded. I'm like, wait, what? Remember, the Bible tells men to put away childish things, and video games are definitely under that category. I'm disgusted, and I'm like, so what are you suggesting I do with my collection then? You should donate it to a child in need. Better yet, my son loves video games, and his birthday is coming up, so you should give it to him. I'm sure he'd be grateful. I'm starting to get really angry, and I say, I'm not sure I would feel comfortable doing that. I'll tell you what, I'm in town till Wednesday. I call you back tomorrow. This gives you plenty of time to pray about it. Hopefully, God convicts you to man up and put away childish things. Good night now," and they hang up. I sat there for a good 15 minutes with anger stewing in my mind over the audacity of this entitled mother. I wanted to call her back and curse her out until a light bulb went off in my head. At the moment, an evil Grinch grin had crept across my face. My mind had just formulated a perfect response to entitled mother's request. The next day, I spent the day waiting for friend's auntie to call me. In the evening, the moment came. I saw my friend's number ringing my phone, and the evil Grinch grin came back to my face. "Why, hello, entitled mother, how are you today?" "I'm doing well. Have you thought about our conversation from yesterday?" "Why, yes, I have." "What did you decide?" Me, in my best jolly, holier-than-thou Joel Olston voice says, God, Joel Olston's so sexy. "Well, I prayed long and hard about what you said, and I spent some time reading the Bible. And, well, growing boys are very pivotal to the future of the kingdom of God, and building a relationship with Jesus is very important to the upbringing. In all honesty, video games are just going to be a distraction to him, and time spent playing them is better dedicated to learning about the Bible. But remember, entitled mother, the book of Proverbs tell us to start children off on the way they should go, and Ephesians tells us to bring them up in the disciple and instruction of the Lord. So unfortunately, I will have to pass on gifting your son my gaming collection. However, I will gladly send a children's study Bible and a DVD collection of VeggieTales to the friend, and he can send them to you." "But OP, wait. It's not going to be an issue." I cut her off, but still in my jolly holier-than-thou voice say, "I'm sorry, entitled mother, but I have an important dinner arrangement to go to. Goodbye now," and I hang up. I turn off my phone after that to make sure that the entitled mother couldn't call me back. Later on that night, friend sent me a message on Facebook apologizing for his aunt's behavior. Apparently, she took his phone behind his back to make both calls and got really upset when he found out about what entitled mother was asking of me. But at the end of the day, I still have my collection and my hobby. Game of Mario Kart, anyone? Posted by user ThorsHammer0999, titled, "My own mother is the entitled parent." So, my father has always doted on my mother, worked hard so she wouldn't have to and could stay at home to raise the kids. Except, my mother was a firm believer in what she called personal responsibility. In her words, I didn't wear those clothes, so why should I have to wash them? That was said to me when I was 9. By the time I was 12, I was doing the dishes, washing my own clothes, taking care of the dogs, emptying and cleaning the cat box, preparing my own meals, and a plethora of other chores on the family farm. Yeehaw! All of us kids were in the same boat. My dad was always gone working hard to make sure that we had a good life, while my mother was always watching Maury Povich, Law and Order, various court shows, Jerry, and taking naps while us kids did all the chores and basically raised ourselves. She ultimately became incredibly spoiled and, quite frankly, completely out of touch with reality. As it does, time moved forward, and all of us kids moved away, got married, and had kids of our own. I specifically moved to Europe, over 3,500 miles away. The family farm suffered a bad fire and was passed into other hands, and my folks moved into town. My dad still working hard while my mother still stayed home so she could watch Maury, Judge Judy, and other trash TV. Ever the same and unchanging. That was until about a month ago. So my dad started to feel a lot of pain in his back. So bad he couldn't walk or really move. The doctors started a whole battery of tests, and after a month, they discovered he has leukemia that has spread to his spine, resulting in stage 4 bone cancer. The doctors believe it's a non-aggressive form of the disease. However, it's too advanced to ever be cured, so they're trying to force it into remission through chemotherapy and immunotherapy. I called to see how they were doing, and my mother basically took over the call. This was her reaction to my father finding out he has a disease that will ultimately kill him one day. Likely sooner rather than later. She was worried about how this would affect their finances, and as such her trips to the casino. Not how they're going to pay the medical bills, or maybe even the mortgage. She was worried about the casino. He was in an appointment for part of his cancer treatment, and she was annoyed because she had no idea if he was rescheduling his chemo for October so she could go on her cruise, like he was supposed to be doing. She bought a new living room set a few months ago. My dad, in his immense amount of pain, finds it to be extraordinarily uncomfortable. He finds himself in even more pain every time he sits down on the new couch. However, his old recliner he finds very comfortable. So naturally, my mother moved it out to the garage and tells him if he wants to be comfortable and sit in his chair, he can go out and sit in the garage. And no, the garage is not set up for comfortable human use. It's used for tools, storage, and her car that he paid for because she hasn't worked in decades. So my dad is not allowed to bring his chair, the only one he finds comfortable, into the house he's paying for so he can be comfortable because my mother doesn't find the chair aesthetically pleasing. Instead, according to my mother, he can go out into the garage and sit surrounded by junk with nothing to do but chain smoke because she doesn't want that ratty old chair in her house. And speaking of smoking, the man is dying of cancer and is trying to quit smoking because of it, so what does my mother do? Well, I bought him the lights this time. Okay, great, Mom. Now he can go out in the garage and chain smoke the light cigarettes because there's nothing else to do out there. And when I suggested she at least clean up the garage and set him up a place that would allow him to watch his football and be comfortable, her only response was, "Why would I do that?" And then proceeded to complain about how much cleaning she has to do now that he's on chemo and is therefore immunocompromised. At first, I thought she was just in denial, but when she said, he better be asking those doctors to move his chemo for October so I can go on my cruise like he's supposed to be doing, I realized that she's just an entitled monster who refuses to do things to make her dying husband more comfortable because they would be mild inconveniences for her. Posted by user GS, titled, "Entitled Dog Parent Yells at Me because I told her that her pit bull needs to be muzzled." So, I, 18 female, work as an office assistant/secretary at a veterinarian office. Since I mostly just check people and schedule appointments and stuff for their pets, I'm not certified in animal care or anything. A few months ago, we had this one lady, let's call her S, come in with her medium-sized pit bull mix. I check her in, and on her dog's file, it says that he has a past history being aggressive towards the vet and vet techs. This means that he's required to have a muzzle on before going into the room with the vet. This is the conversation that follows. I say, hey, it looks like dog has a past history of being aggressive towards the vet, so he's gonna have to have a muzzle on before he goes into the room. Do you have one with you? No, I don't have a muzzle with me. He won't need one. I'm sorry, ma'am. He's gonna have to have a muzzle on before the vet can look at him. It's the rules. We have some that we can use for the appointment. Why? Is it because he's a pit bull? He's just a big baby and wouldn't even hurt a fly. This is discrimination against pit bulls. No, ma'am. It's not because he's a pit bull. His file says he's been aggressive toward the vet before. A lot of dogs don't like the vet, so it's pretty common for them to have to be muzzled, regardless of the breed. We've had to muzzle Chihuahuas before. That's true, my Chihuahua possum has to be muzzled every time we go to the vet. She's a vicious dog. Dog just doesn't like the vet to be touching him or messing with his body parts. Just tell vet not to do that, and he won't bite like last time. Ma'am, how is the vet supposed to do his job if he can't touch the dog? He needs to make sure everything is working right. I don't care. My dog is not going to be muzzled, and that's final. You are discriminating against my poor little baby dog because he's a pit bull. I can't believe that I'm facing this kind of harassment for owning a pit bull at a vet's office, for God's sake. We went back and forth like this for a while. I kept telling her that her dog isn't going to see the vet until he has a muzzle on, and she kept telling me he didn't mean it and that I was saying that he's aggressive because he's a pit bull. Eventually, she put a muzzle on the dog, and he apparently acted fine and not aggressive with the muzzle on. But since he was aggressive once without the muzzle, he will still have to be muzzled for future appointments. She ended up filing a complaint against me because I was discriminating against her and her dog. But it never really went anywhere. She has another appointment next week, so that's going to be fun. Posted by user Dreams of Clean Teeth. Titled, Entitled Dad Picks on Teen Girls Because He's Intimidated by Bouncer. I am a hostess at an outdoor beer garden. We are open to families during the day, but in the evening, everything becomes 21 plus. Yesterday, a couple came to eat with their toddler for lunch, who was screaming and crying before they even walked in. As the hosting team, we made sure to seat the family at a low-top table with seats with backs to accommodate their child because we are nice and thoughtful hostesses. Apparently, the couple let their child run around the restaurant and make a mess with the gravel on the ground, and the bouncer asks the couple to please keep their child seated. He even referenced the signs on the wall stating, "Children must be seated." Naturally, the couple gets angry and decides to leave. On their way out, they march around the hosting table and start berating us, saying, "Hi, I think you guys did a great job as hostesses. You were nice and dull, but I have a suggestion. Just a suggestion. We came to this restaurant because it's kid-friendly, and we just wanted to have a good time. But that man told us our kid can't run around and have fun. How is a kid supposed to stay seated in a place like this that's made for kids to run around?" Myself and the other hosts are visibly confused. You should have told us beforehand that our child wouldn't be able to run around. When you see that someone has a child, you need to inform them of the rules before seating them. I'm just trying to make a suggestion for you guys to help you do a better job next time, because now our experience was ruined and that's why we decided to leave. And then the man just walks away, and the three of us were just left confused and ticked off. Like, 1, I think I know how to do my job. It's not your fault you can't control your child in public. 2, this is a bar. It is not exactly family friendly. We just tolerate children during the day. And 3, it's not my fault you're so insecure as a grown man that you have to take your anger out on 3 19-year-olds because the big scary bouncer told you to control your snot goblin. Ugh. Posted by user The Lunatic Brit. Titled, Your guinea pig looks sad and scared, so I'm taking him with me. Just like the title says, an entitled crapstain tried to take my guinea pig because she thinks that it looked scared and sad. Now, before I go into detail, I wonder why a small animal would be scared of loud, drunk, and obnoxious idiots barging into my home. So, currently 11 PM at the time of this post, and it's hot as hell in the UK, and I'm just about to go to sleep. But lo and behold, a drunk, idiotic, obnoxious, brain-dead moron comes barging into my home and starts talking crap about me, my dad, and my younger brothers. For those who catch on quickly, I'm indeed talking about my mum, who I've blacklisted out of my life, who thinks the world revolves around her, and has a hissy fit when someone proves her wrong. She starts sobbing and crying, saying, "Lunatic, nobody loves me. Why does nobody love me?" To which I explained to her, "You're an abusive drunk, you're cruel and vindictive, you talk crap about your own fudging kids, and then start to wonder why nobody in your family loves you." She tries to bullcrap her way out of it, saying, "Oh, I don't mean it. I only say those things when I'm drunk." Pro tip, she doesn't. So, as I'm tired, ticked off, and done with her, I tell her she can either get out on her own, or I'll call the cops to get her out. She reluctantly does so, but when she walks past my living room and sees my guinea pig curled up next to a frozen water bottle, she goes, "Aw, look at your little baby. He looks so sad." At this point, I walk to the door and order her out much more aggressively to try and get it through her head that she has to leave. When she walks up, she goes, "Fine, I'll fudging leave, but I'm taking your guinea pig with me. It looks sad and scared." To which I grab the guinea pig out of her hands and shove her out, locking the door behind me, with her going, "How dare you? I'm your mother. I demand you give me your guinea pig so I can look after it." She's still outside, screaming her head off, while I'm stuck wide awake in this dreadful heat, calming and soothing my guinea pig. And she wonders why I want to get a restraining order against her. Posted by user, "Hey, it's me, look." Titled, Entitled Mother Steals My Self-Started College Fund for Sister's Birthday. So, whole growing up, I found myself having a horde of entitled parents, step, and otherwise. My mum was great most times, but still felt entitled to my stuff as I was her kid. On to the story. When I was a kid after my twin brother got diagnosed with cancer, I became obsessed with saving money for my future. I figured if only one of us got to have one, I'd make it awesome enough for the both of us. He's in remission for 10 years next month, but at the time, I didn't know he'd live. This meant every holiday I was on, I found myself saving all the money I got because I was going to go to Harvard. I was going to have an awesome career and zero student debt. I'd also mow lawns, weed gardens, as well as tutor and babysit kids when I got old enough. At the point this story happened, I had a happy $10,000 saved up, not enough for all the college, but only $3,000 less than my total loans for college. I was also not allowed a bank account because of my age, and no one wanted one with me. This meant I had roughly $10,000 in $100 notes. I'd trade smaller bills with my mum in my closet in a shoebox. My mum had my sister when I was 14, and she was born very early, 27 weeks, and spent most of her first year in and out of hospitals. So my mum has dedicated her life to making my sister's life the best it can be. One day, shortly after my sister was born, my mum asked if she could borrow some of my money, as they would be short on rent that month due to my mum and stepdad being at the hospital so much and having their savings depleted. I made her promise that she would pay me back and handed her $500 from the box and told her to put it back in said box when she would pay me back. I checked 2 months later, and she had paid me back. Cool. Then my sister's birthday rolled around. It was an amazing feat that she had made it to 1 year. My mum was ready to have a huge party. She rented out an entire aquarium because my little sister loved Ariel. She got my sister a custom-made dress that looked like Ariel's pink one from the movie, huge cake from the best local bakery, tower of presents, the whole 9 yards. Near the end of the party, she announced that she had taken notes from my thrifty saving and had started my sister a high-interest saving account with $1,000 at the moment, so when she turned 18, she'd be set. She also informed family members that any money she received as a gift today would go there. We weren't wealthy by any means, so I figured that my stepdad's parents, wealthy old money, had paid for all this. I was 15 at the time that this happened, with a permit from school that I was able to get a part-time job. I went to put my first check in my shoebox, and I had noticed it only had 1 envelope in it versus the 10 I had. I opened it up, expecting to count $1,000, but it was only $374, showing whoever took it had the foresight to put back what they didn't use. I had an absolute panic attack. Fell to the ground, screaming, hyperventilating, crying, unable to speak, panic. That's when my brother came in. He wasn't sure what to do, so he got my mum. She got down on my level and soothed me to where I was able to communicate anything. She asked what happened, and here's the exchange roughly. EM is mum, me is me, TB is twin brother. Now, what happened? Everyone's alright, are you okay? Robbed! We got robbed! What do you mean, honey? I started crying again and said I only have $300. I noticed that my mum became slightly less comforting and her tone became slightly less nervous. 300? Did you take it? She was referring to my brother. No, why would I steal from OP? I didn't even know she had money. Well, OP, I'm sure you lost it. No 15-year-old needs $10,000 anyway. We'll get you a bank account. That way this won't happen again. I didn't lose it. Well, you must have thrown it away then or something. That's when it suddenly clicked. How my sister had such an awesome party. Mum, please tell me that you didn't take it for my sister's birthday. My mum got defensive and started acting like, and this is the best way to describe it, a guilty Danganronpa character during the rhythm minigame. She says, I would never. What would I even use it for? Your sister has had a hard life. You would be lucky if that's where your money went. You even got the money from us. Only part of it, but whatever. I remember distinctly putting $500 in your stupid box. My twin brother's like, oh my god, mum's a thief. I'm not the thief. I've given everything so you kids can have the best lives. I was at the hospital every night with you. I shaved your head when your hair started falling out. This continued, and would be a lot of typing, but you get the gist. Mum, You gave me that money because you guys didn't have rent. That's TB, out. This is between OP and I, woman to woman. She pushed my brother out and locked the door behind him. Sweetie, one day when you become a mum, you'll understand that you would do anything for your kids. When God gives you 2 sick kids who get better, you want to celebrate them. Don't you want your sister to have a good time? Doesn't she deserve to go to college one day? You're so smart and strong. You don't need help like the other 2. You'll probably get a full ride anyway. I was in tears and too shaken up to talk. I just sobbed in the fetal position. She continued to talk at me for a while, but I don't remember much other than waking up there for school the next day with my comforter on me, and TB sleeping in my bed with his blanket/pillow. I never got any money back, but after buying a small safe with that paycheck instead, saved up more and worked 2 jobs when I was 16 so I could have money. I ended up with about $5,000 after having to pay for my own car and insurance to get to and from work and a few other things. No. Posted by user Iced Shower. Titled, Entitled Mother Doesn't Like It When Other People Wear Face Coverings. I'm on mobile, so sorry if the formatting is weird. I was shopping for food and other essentials with my fiancé yesterday, and we were both wearing masks that I'd made out of some old t-shirts. We noticed that the whole time we were in the store, a woman and her son were not socially distancing at all, and she was actually letting her kid put fingers in his mouth and pick his nose before and after touching things. They also weren't wearing masks, but I wasn't too bothered about that since it's not mandatory in the UK unless you're using public transport. Personally, I wear one when I'm in a public building because I really don't want to get sick, but I know I can't force other people to wear them too. We got to the frozen food section and it was just us alone in the aisle with this lady and her son. Her kid looked at us and started asking his mother why we were wearing masks. His mother answered very loudly, like she was making sure we heard her. Mummy, why are those people wearing things on their faces? What things? They're masks. Yeah, why are they wearing those? Because they're idiots. Why are they idiots? Because they think breathing air will make them ill. Well, that's silly. I know. I looked over at her at this point and narrowed my eyes. The woman did the same and walked away, dragging her kid behind her by the arm. I honestly don't know why she seemed to take such an issue with 2 strangers choosing to wear masks. It wasn't like I walked over and demanded she and her kid wear them. I don't know. People are weird. Edit. After reading the comments, I now understand that wearing a mask protects other people rather than myself. Thank you for letting me know. I've been wearing them in public since the start of the pandemic in March, and will continue to do so, even though a lot of people seem to think social distancing is not a thing anymore. Thank you so much for all the upvotes. I know it's not your traditional entitled parent story filled with a lot of screaming, calling the cops, and stealing other people's property, but the encounter still annoyed me enough that I wanted to share it. I hope everyone is staying safe. Love heart. Alright guys, that's all for today's video. I hope you enjoyed this one today. Tell me what you thought of it down in the comments below. If you're not subscribed to the channel, I would love you to subscribe because I love your face and I love seeing you here every single day that you are here in this video. I don't know what else to say today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the content. I do have a second channel that's called Markee 2. Link should be up on the screen somewhere here if you don't have adblock installed. If you don't know where to find the channel, you can go to my main page. Just click on the Markee face and it should be on the right, somewhere there, or on channels if you're on phone. Hope you guys have a good one. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.